Hello and welcome to Tech Twins Israel and Dubai podcast. With us today is Perri Finkelstein, Head of Business Development and Value Creation at Protego. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, fantastic. So what brought you here to Dubai?
So we are here in Dubai because we are part of a larger group attending the IDEX Defense Conference in Abu Dhabi. It's one of the largest defense conferences in the Middle East. As one of the leaders in defense technology, we felt it's important for us to have a presence at the conference, meet different leaders from the region as well as from abroad. And so we're really looking forward to meeting a lot of different people, exploring synergies and figuring out how we can collaborate with the larger global defense community.
Is that your first time here?
It is my first time here.
And what do you think?
Wow, I'm really blown away, I have to say. I'm a New Yorker, so for me, skyscrapers, it's not as new, but being in such a vibrant and also, by the way, very clean city
Definitely.
is amazing. Everything feels so new. Everything feels sparkly and glamorous and exciting. And I'm just having the most incredible time here. People need to come here more.
They do, definitely. And look, talking about new things, Protego is also new, right? You guys started around 3-4 months ago. Can you tell me about Protego a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So Protego Ventures is the first of its kind. We are an Israel-based defense technology venture capital fund. Like you said, we officially launched 3 months ago. You might have seen our article in Kalman.
Yes, of course.
But the inception for Protego Ventures actually started way before that. Can't ignore the elephant in the room, which is October 7th. And after October 7th, there was a real shift, and our managing partners saw this shift coming because of their experience in venture capital and their experience in the defense world. They understood that there was this, let's say, gap in the market, and that private capital was going to become crucial in order for the innovation that was coming out of the battlefield after October 7th to grow and to scale. And so they really saw the opportunity, now 18 months ago, for a fund that was solely focused on defense technology to really help the ecosystem grow. If you look at Israel's history, it's always been a defense hub.
Yeah.
A country that has pretty much been under heavy fire since its inception. Necessity is the mother of all invention. And so when you have a country that's constantly being threatened or constantly under attack, you have to defend yourself. And the country has always been a defense hub. Historically, it's been dominated by the 3 Israeli primes, Elbit, Rafael, and IAI. But after October 7th, there was this cataclysmic shift, I would say, in terms of an openness for startups and private capital to start working more closely with the defense primes. I was listening to a very interesting talk from West Point in the US. One of the speakers said that if we look at history, most countries are prepared to fight the previous war, not the current war, which I thought was very interesting. And how that ties into October 7th is that we were prepared for everything that had happened up until October 7th. But afterwards, we had this shock factor in terms of how we approach modern day warfare. And so from very early on, we were seeing innovation in real time coming out of the battlefield in the south, in the north, on 7 different fronts. And it's really incredible, the transformation that's happening.
Yeah. So who funded Protego?
Protego Ventures was founded by 2 women, Lital Leshem, who comes from the different defense systems, spent many years in the different industries in defense, and actually was a partner at Frontier, which is a private equity fund investing in defense, drones, and unmanned vehicles. And Lee Moser, who has spent more than a decade in venture capital and has raised close to $500 million in her career. And so after October 7th, these two women came together and saw a real need to focus on defense technology. And what Protego Ventures is doing is backing founders who are developing innovative and impactful solutions for the battlefield and beyond. And that's what Protego Ventures is doing.
So, a young defense venture funded by two women. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, we get that a lot. The truth is that, yes, historically, the defense industry has been a male-dominated industry. And the truth is we didn't do it on purpose. We just had two incredible leaders who saw a real need in the market and decided to do something about it. And for me, it's very inspiring to see two incredible women who are trailblazers. You know, we go to many events and we travel to many different places where there aren't a lot of women in the room. But I think that's changing. We went to a conference last week in Europe where there was a whole panel of women talking about the role of women in defense and how historically it hadn't been the number one choice in terms of career path for women. But I think we're seeing a big change the same way that the industry is changing. I think the world is changing in terms of encouragement for women to play a more active role in the defense industry.
And is Protego the first venture that's only defense-oriented?
So we are among the first, yes. There are several funds in Israel that are now wanting to do defense technology or do defense investments because at the end of the day, people see the opportunity. Israel, until today, has not had, let's say, those defense unicorns. We've had plenty of cyber unicorns and plenty of other unicorns in other industries. But if you look at global companies like Helsing, like Anduril, Palantir, Shield AI, Hypergiant, you can see the opportunity in terms of return on investment for defense technology. And as I said before, the market in Israel was dominated by the three Israeli primes, and there wasn't really that natural entry point for private capital as well as startups. But again, I think October 7th and recent history, geopolitical tensions around the world has shifted that and kind of opened up this, let's say, pathway for private capital and for startups to start being more prevalent and actually working more closely with the primes. And so as an investor, if you see that the path to entry is now, or the barrier to entry has now been lowered, and you see that there's a potential high return on investment, it makes it very attractive.
And before October 7th, I mean, you said, right, Israel is a country that, for us, defense is a necessity. Can you tell me a bit about the ecosystem of defense before October 7th? How is it like? Were there startups other than the main three? How would they get capital?
It's a great question. So I would say that Israel was a defense hub, like you said, because it had to be, but also because we have mandatory military service. And so you have 18-year-olds joining the army, having firsthand experience and using technology or tools in their day-to-day for 2.5 to 3 years. And when they come out of the army, they're like, oh, okay, I did this one thing in the army, but I noticed that there were a lot of gaps or challenges in what I was doing. And so I want to go and start a company that's going to help solve that. And I would say defense is very similar to every other industry in Israel in that when there's a problem, Israelis want to solve it. It's very much in the ethos of the startup nation. You know, say to an Israeli, like, I'll give you a challenge, they'll find an even more challenging, thing to solve. And I think it's inherent in the culture. It's inherent in who Israelis are. And that definitely translates to defense technology. And so before October 7th, I would say there were plenty of startups. But I can tell you that the numbers were definitely fewer. Whereas today, according to Startup Nation Central in their most recent report, I believe they said there were 300 defense technology startups today in Israel, which is huge. On top of that, they said 12% of high-tech employees in Israel are working for defense companies, which is also a huge percentage. And so it existed before. It absolutely existed before. But I think the acceleration and the increase that we've seen since October 7th is really representing what we're calling this paradigm shift of a more proactive approach to defense innovation versus a reactive approach. And listen, we're not the first ones to be going through this. You look at other geopolitical tensions around the world, it's kind of been stirring for a while. And I think other countries are also taking notice. You know, Israel doesn't just build for Israel. Israel also builds for a global market. And you know, we've sold to Germany, we've sold to other countries in the world, and that's because at the end of the day, Israel values its collaboration with its allies and its partners abroad.
So, going back to what you said, would you say that before October 7th, the Israeli market was reactive? And the ecosystem was it more reactive than innovative? Or
I would say the innovation existed, but not at the scale. You know, it wasn't, I don't want to use the word friendly, but it wasn't as, the barrier to entry was a little bit higher, you know? And listen, we heard one anecdote that procurement cycles, and that's another reason why historically VCs have been have shied away from defense, because at the end of the day, procurement, sales cycles, all those things take a long time. And when you're an investor, you want to get that sales multiplier. You want to get that ROI as soon as you can.
Of course.
But when you're dealing with something like defense, where there's 26-month procurement processes, 18-month sales cycles, it's less attractive.
It's long term.
Exactly. But And that was true, by the way, in Israel. Israel wasn't, exempt from that. But post October 7th, we saw procurement timelines go from 18 months to 6 weeks.
How is it possible?
I think it's possible for two reasons. One, necessity. At the end of the day, there wasn't this, we have to get a million different approvals. We have to take it up the ladder. We have to get signatures from these and these people. It was, we need this now. Soldiers are in danger. People are dying. And we need to do everything possible to protect our forces on the ground and our country. And I think that's number one. And I think number two, the reason why things have been able to accelerate and innovate at such a great speed is because, unfortunately, Israel is the largest and fastest beta testing ground. At the end of the day, Israeli defense technology is built, tested, optimized, and proven on the battlefield before it even hits the market. There is no other country in the world that has that efficacy of proven defense technology more than Israel. Because at the end of the day, we have to prove it. Because if we don't, people die. And so the wonderful thing, again, try and see the silver lining in all of this,
of course,
is that even though we're at war, we are able to prove out the technology and the innovation that's happening in real time. And I think that's another reason why Israel has always been a leader and will continue to be a leader, is because we have to be. And we have to see what's going on the ground. We have to get feedback from, soldiers in real time, make adjustments, and then go back in and prove it again. And so that to me is why Israel, even pre-October 7th was a leader and will continue to be. And I think also why we're going to continue to see a ton of innovation in the year to come.
And what are the many factors? I mean, besides military service, what do you think that makes Israelis able to innovate in such a big scale?
Well, scale is actually a challenge in Israel. That's why, a lot of companies want to go abroad because at the end of the day, Israel is a very small market. And so there's only so much you can grow. There's kind of that glass ceiling in Israel.
So it's a startup nation, but not a scale-up nation.
Exactly. And part of what we're doing at Protego Ventures is we're actually trying to bridge that gap between startup to scale up. And the way that you do that is by entering a secondary market. That's why the UAE and this region is so important to us. They're so close. Why wouldn't we want to sell to and collaborate and work with the region? It's so close. And that's what we're doing at Protego Ventures. We're not just writing a check. We like to think of ourselves as strategic capital and smart capital, not just capital. Because at the end of the day, if you want to scale a startup, you have to think about what is the secondary or tertiary market that you're going to go to. Obviously, the U.S. is a huge market.
Of course. The biggest always.
The biggest. And so part of what we've built at Protego Ventures is a really strong advisory board that has experience doing just that, which is understanding how to scale companies from abroad into the U.S., understanding who they need to work with, whether it's government procurement agencies or working directly with three-letter agencies in the U.S. And that's really our biggest differentiator. Going back to your earlier question about are there other VCs who are doing this in Israel? There are. And we collaborate with all of them. We're actually very close with a lot of them. And we actually see them as a really important part in the journey because we're focused on early growth, which means A and above, product market fit, certain number of annual recurring revenue. And so we are in very close contact with the pre-seed and the seed investors because at the end of the day, we know that they're going to be investing in the companies that we will eventually invest in.
Okay. And what innovation have you seen so far?
So I'm sure you've read about it and everyone's talking about the fact that there are tons of suicide drones. We saw this in Russia, Ukraine. We're seeing it now in Israel on 7 different fronts. And so we're seeing a lot of counter drone companies who are trying to solve for the biggest issue, which is that enemies are able to buy $90, $150, $200 drones from, let's say, AliExpress or another online company, put a munition or a bomb or something on that drone and then fly it into Israel.
That simple?
It's that simple.
Wow.
And up until recently, the only way that Israel could counter that was by sending an F-16, which costs thousands, if not millions of dollars to stop. And so
it's a very expensive solution to a cheap problem.
Exactly. And the economics don't make sense. And so you have people who are in reserve duty who are seeing this in real time saying, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely.
This just doesn't make sense. So we're going to come up with a technology. We're going to come up with something so that we can, at scale, efficiently and economically counter what is being happened. So we're seeing a lot of counter drone, a lot of aerial defense, a lot of anti-jamming.
What is that?
So right now, or let's say for the past 18 months, our enemies have been doing a lot in order to jam communications. And this isn't just military communications. This is also down to communications like using Waze to get to the office.
Okay, yeah. So GPS and...
Exactly. And so I can't tell you how many times I would open my phone and put in Waze and it would tell me I was in Lebanon. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I'm not. I'm in Tel Aviv. But sure. And so at the end of the day, when your technology is based on that communication, in order to get to where it needs to go to, and a GPS signal is lost, the drone or the machine doesn't know where to go, doesn't know where to fly, doesn't know where the target is.
Wow, okay.
Which is a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And so the counter to that is anti-jamming. And so there's a lot of startups that we're seeing that are trying to solve for that issue, whether it's flying below radar, above, but it's a huge problem. And I would say the last thing that we're seeing a lot of is robotics. Israel is not, we hope one day it'll be a manufacturing hub. Right now, we're still, I think, buying a lot of parts from abroad.
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of our larger mission is that Israel becomes more self-sufficient. And I think that translates and extends to manufacturing as well. But at the end of the day, the future of warfare is in drones, AI, and robotics. And we are going to get to a point, I believe, where the battlefield, at least the first line of defense, will be too dangerous for soldiers.
So robots would come in?
Absolutely. And there are already companies today that are doing that. That's why we invested in the company that we first invested in, because they are doing drones and robotics using AI in order to ensure that soldiers can essentially learn how to use their tools in 5 to 10 minutes.
Wow.
Which is the kind of adaptability that you want, especially when you're in a mission critical situation.
Super easy, super quick.
Exactly. And so we're seeing a lot of companies in those spaces. And like I said, it's an unfortunate reality, but the way to kind of, like I said, take that more proactive approach is by thinking about what does the future of warfare look like, and how are we going to create technology or software or solutions so that in 5 years from now, if God forbid there is another war, we're ready and we're not prepared for the last war, but the current war.
Of course. So you mentioned AI right earlier as a contributor to how the defense industry is going to be shaped. Can you elaborate about that a bit? Because AI has been popping anywhere, right? And every single day you hear in the news, AI this, AI that, new tools, amazing.
The new buzzword.
It's a new buzzword, basically, yes. So how's it going to shape the defense industry?
It's a great question. So I think AI plays a really important role when it comes to data and validation. At the end of the day, tools are getting smarter on the battlefield, but in order for them to get smarter, they need to be processing large amounts of data in real time very quickly. And I think before AI, we weren't able to process that data as quickly.
Yeah. Big data was a thing, but it wasn't.
It was something that had to kind of be built separately and then brought in. Whereas now, because of AI, you're able to process battlefield, I'm talking about battlefield data in real time, whether that's aerial data, whether that's ground data, and you're able to basically package it so that soldiers can make real-time decisions and not have to wait, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes in order to get, let's say, an approval or an okay in order to take a next step. And those 5 to 10 minutes can be the difference between life and death. And so AI is basically, I think, this not so secret weapon that's allowing ground forces, people in, base or war rooms to essentially make real-time decisions that are actually saving lives on a daily basis. And, I think a lot of people tend to be scared of AI. And of course, no one wants to see actual Terminator,
of course,
on the battlefield. And so
I would be scared.
Yeah, let's hope that doesn't come to fruition. But there are real ways in which AI is making us smarter. And again, it all comes down to that ability to analyze and synthesize huge amounts of data in a very short time. And like I said, it's the difference between life and death.
And how is AI actually integrating? So do you see more companies or more ideas that are only AI, or do you see AI as a tool that helps or that is a part of other initiatives?
We're seeing a combination of both, to be honest. We're seeing some companies that are built on AI, and therefore without it, the company doesn't exist. And then we're seeing companies actually that existed before and have existed for, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years. And in, let's say, the last 2 or 3 years have started using AI in order to improve that which they've already built. And that, let's say, product progression or product improvement that would have been a couple of years to achieve is now being achieved in 6 to 8 months.
Wow.
Which is, again, extremely important because you need to create a solution that people actually need. Because even though defense budgets are increasing around the world, they're also increasing for very specific things, because at the end of the day, armies know the challenges that they have to solve.
Yeah.
Because there is this feedback loop and there is this community that talks to each other. And so they have a very, let's say, the same way they have strict requirements for products, they have requirements for what they actually need. And so if I'm a founder and I've created, let's say, this great software or hardware and software company that I want to sell to a government agency or that I want to sell for military purposes, but it's missing that kind of like it factor special thing, AI is a great kind of additive.
So it's a bridge that helps you get there.
Exactly. Perfect way to say it.
And what are the challenges, right? Because, I mean, you mentioned being scared of AI.
How much time do we have?
We do have some time left.
Let's talk about Israel specifically, because I think, that's the market that we know the best, and there are tons of challenges. So let's start with Israel. At the end of the day, Israel has 3 main challenges. 1, lack of capital, which is what we're aiming to solve, which is that other than, like I said, the 3 Israeli primes who have up until recently cornered the market and have majority of the capital, there has not been private money coming into startups in defense technology. And that's a challenge. 20 years ago in the United States, if you said anything related to defense, related to government, people ran away from you because people saw it as dirty. People saw it as lots of red tape, not something that they wanted to get involved with.
Bureaucratic and everything.
Exactly. But that's changed. And so in the last, I'd say, 10 years, you've seen a lot of private capital going into defense in the United States. Tel Aviv tends to follow Silicon Valley. And so even though we're a few years behind, we're now starting to see that. But up until now, it's been a real challenge for defense companies to raise money unless they were dual use. I'm not sure if you know what dual use is, but dual use.
Civil that can be used to defense.
Exactly. And so if you were commercial or civilian, it was easier to sell to an investor because it was like, well, we have this whole strategy and we have revenues for our civilian and our commercial product line. But we also have this defense line that we want to sell.
By the way, were there many companies like that in Israel that do the dual use, or is that like a niche?
I would say it's hard to describe anything in Israel as many.
Okay.
Because it's a very small market.
Definitely.
But there were a handful of dual use companies before October 7th. And but the shift was that after October 7th, you had, and I'm going on a slight tangent here, but at least for me, as someone who made Aliyah, moved to Israel from the United States and decided to make Israel my home, to see founders, let's say, of these civilian or commercial companies, whether it was in agritech, whether it was in, commerce, e-commerce or whatever, to see them go into reserves and then come out and say, I have this business and it's doing well and it can continue to do well and I'll be fine for the rest of my life. But actually, now that I've seen what I've seen and now that I have experienced firsthand on the battlefield what is going on, I believe that my company can actually be pivoted and used for defense, and I'm going to go and do that. And that's a huge shift that we're seeing. And for me, that's really inspiring to see a handful of founders who made that shift. But anyways, going back to the
challenges.
The challenges. So private capital, number 1, for sure. But again, that's part of what Protego Ventures is doing. We're trying to bridge that gap by bringing in private capital in order to help those Israeli companies. With number 2, which number 2 challenge is scale. Because at the end of the day, there's that glass ceiling that we talked about in Israel. There's only so far you can grow. And so if you don't have the right partners or the right strategy to scale into secondary markets, especially like the United States, which has tons of bureaucracy and tons of red tape and multiple steps that you need to take.
And tons of competition as well, I believe.
Tons of competition. And so if you don't have the right strategy and the right partners in place, you're not going to successfully scale into the market. And that was a really big challenge that I think Israeli companies had. But given the changing world, I think given the openness and given the fact that there's creative ways of working, there's more of an opportunity for Israeli companies to scale into secondary markets.
But then with those secondary markets, because we spoke about Israel and about the innovation that was sparked as a result of October 7th, are those solutions only oriented what Israel needs, or would you see them fitting other markets? Because I believe, every single country needs other things for defense.
It's a great question. I like to say what's good for Israel is good for the world. And I really believe that. I believe that Israel builds technology and builds solutions that on a, let's say, micro level are built for the Israeli, let's say, landscape, but on a macro level are built for the world's defense challenges. Now, with the caveat, okay, that if you are a defense founder and you have a defense company founder and you have your sights set on a market like the US or a market like Germany or the UAE, you are going to start that company with that in mind. You have to, because at the end of the day, to your point, they are a different country with a different set of needs at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so if you want to build a successful company, you have to have the agility and the ability to essentially plug and play that technology into any system, which is, again, why we invested in the company that we invested in, because they actually started as a gaming company.
Really?
Yeah. They actually started as one of the largest drone flying gaming companies in the region and made the transition to defense several years ago. But they built a solution that could essentially plug into any government or any military organization system in the world. And it's that customization and it's that ability to build something that is malleable, that is, again, able to just plug and play into anything. Because like you said, not every government has the same challenges or even wants to use the same kind of terminology.
But it looks like, that what makes Israel special, right? Because we have a big and successful private sector. You just said gaming, turned into combat. People that are talented and that are able to take their products, their solutions, and basically shift them towards defense and solve defense problems. Can you elaborate about the role of the private sector when it comes to defense? Because I believe Israel is pretty special regarding that.
Absolutely. I think that, again, I'm going to come back to October 7th because I can't not. We are not shy in saying that our investors see Protego Ventures, and we agree that Protego Ventures is a double bottom line in terms of investment. It's ROI, of course, again, because if you look at companies like Palantir, Anduril, Shield AI, the numbers are there. They speak for themselves. So the opportunity in terms of return on investment is there. But that double bottom line is Zionism. And I think before, where you had private capital being funneled into universities or other institutions, people around the world saw October 7th as an opportunity to support Israel where it needed it most, which was financially. Because unfortunately, a lot of institutions left Israel from an investment perspective after October 7th because of fear of instability, which, by the way, the numbers bounced back within a matter of weeks, which, again, just speaks to Israel's resilience in my mind.
2024 had an increase, right? 13% in investment.
Exactly. And so, but again, that increase, I believe, was because you saw a huge group of people from outside of the country saying we need to support Israel where it needs it most. And at the end of the day, the high-tech industry is the backbone of Israel's, economy. And so you have had this influx because people, again, saw a double bottom line. And so to me, the role that private capital can play and will continue to play is helping companies kind of get to that next stage. Because at the end of the day, especially, within high tech, and I'm not even talking about defense now, I'm talking about other industries, that jump from pre-seed and seed to A requires a lot of capital.
Yeah.
And we need that. We need that in this country, in Israel, sorry. And so I think that the role of private capital is crucial. And I'll go even further to say, again, what makes Protego so unique is that we're smart capital. We're not just private capital. And the smart capital that we bring is people, investors and advisors who know the US market or who know the European market or who know, the GCC market and understand what it means to scale a company here or there.
Let's get to some closing thoughts.
Sure.
What do you see the future of the defense ecosystem in Israel? 5 to 10 years from now?
How can we even think about 10 years from now? I feel like I can barely think about a year from now. Listen, I think that, like I've said before, the definition of warfare is changing, has changed, and will continue to change. And Israel will be at the forefront of that change. And so where I see Israeli defense technology in the next 5 to 10 years is really as a leader. I don't think that there will be a question on anyone's mind as to Israel's role in the defense industry, as to what it can and has contributed to, let's say, global security and global safety. I think that what we talked about before in terms of AI, I think we're going to see a ton more defense companies not just using AI as a component, but built on AI. I think that's only going to increase. And I think that, we will continue to see an influx of private capital into Israel, specifically focused on defense. That's why we built Protego Ventures, and that's what we're betting on.
Amazing. Okay, so Perri, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.
So much fun.
Thank you very much, and see you soon.